Then, of course, the reason of doing this, both in the US-led contact group for Ukraine, but also in the NATO Ukraine Commission, is to have first-hand information and to be able to sit down with Ukrainians to discuss the specific needs.
Yes, hello Stoltenberg. The Danish defense minister will put forward a plan for training of the Ukrainian pilots in the F-16 program. How close are we actually on delivering F-16s or other Western-produced fighter jets for Ukraine? And then secondly, you have just been to the United States. Were you asked then if you could be persuaded to take on a little more time as Secretary-General if the member states can't agree on a successor?
First of all, I welcome the decision by several NATO allies to provide a training of fighter pilots. This is important, and it will enable us to, at a later stage, also make decisions to deliver fourth-generation fighter aircraft, like, for instance, the F-16s. And I would like to commend Denmark for playing a leading role to facilitate this agreement and also to offer to provide training for the Ukrainian pilots. This just shows that Denmark is a country that has really played an important role and continues to play an important role in providing significant support to Ukraine. Exactly when decisions will be taken, it's too early to say, but the fact that training has started provides us with the option to also decide to deliver planes, and then the pilots will be ready to fly them. I visited Washington earlier this week, and the main purpose of that visit was, of course, to discuss the preparations for the Vilnius summit. This is part of my regular engagement with leaders across the alliance, and in the meeting with President Biden we discussed deterrence and defense, Ukraine, the need to strengthen our defense investment pledge, and other important issues for the alliance. When it comes to my successor, that is an issue to be decided by the 31 allies. I am responsible for all decisions that this alliance has to take, except for one, and that is about my future. That is for the 31 allies to decide.
Finnish news agency.
Thank you. Sweden was negotiating yesterday in Ankara, and at the same time there were some bitey comments from President Erdogan. So how should we understand those comments, and is it still possible to have Sweden as a full member in the Vilnius summit?
I welcome the fact that we had a meeting of the permanent mechanism between Finland, Sweden and Turkey, where also NATO participates, in Ankara this week. This was a follow-up of the meeting I had with President Erdogan a couple of weeks ago, where we had good discussions on how to make progress on Swedish accession into the alliance. And President Erdogan and I agreed then to convene the meeting of the permanent mechanism. They met this week, and the meeting took place in a constructive atmosphere, constructive talks, and where they addressed progress and identified also how to continue to make progress, and also agreed to continue to work on how to ensure that we are moving forward on Swedish of the accession of Sweden into the alliance. Sweden has delivered on the commitments Sweden made at the summit in Madrid last year, which is to remove restrictions on arms exports, to strengthen the cooperation with Turkey in fighting terrorism. Sweden has changed it, amended its constitution and strengthened its anti-terrorist legislation. And all of this demonstrates that Sweden has delivered. That has been my message also. At the same time, we need to realize that Turkey has some legitimate security concerns. No other NATO allies has suffered more terrorist attacks. And that's the reason why I also welcome that we are together, sitting there and discussing how to further strengthen the cooperation in fighting terrorism. It is possible to get Sweden in by the Vilnius summit. I cannot guarantee you that that will happen, but I'm still working hard to ensure the accession of Sweden as soon as possible, and therefore also welcome the meeting I had with President Erdogan and the meeting of the permanent mechanism this week.
Sergei Pelesa, Belsa TV. Thanks for the question. The question is about NATO statement on the potential nuclear weapon in Belarus. Lukashenko talks about nuclear weapon in Belarus as if it is a fact, and Putin announced that they will deliver this kind of weapon at the beginning of July, just before the summit in Vilnius. What options of reaction to such a step is considered by NATO? Perhaps the deployment of additional defense means to protect allies in countries neighboring Belarus from potential Iskander missiles. Thank you.
So Russia's nuclear rhetoric and messaging is reckless and dangerous, and Russia must know that a nuclear war can not be won and must never be fought. And we are, of course, closely monitoring what Russia is doing. So far, we haven't seen any changes in their nuclear posture that requires any changes in our posture. But at the same time, what we see is part of a pattern where Russia has invested heavily in new modern nuclear capabilities and also deployed more nuclear capabilities, including close to NATO borders, for instance, in the high north. So this is part of a pattern that NATO already has responded to by increasing the readiness of our forces, by increasing the presence in the eastern part of the alliance, and we will continue to closely monitor what is needed and how Russia is changing their nuclear posture.
General Secretary, you have formally stated that you would end your term, step down as General Secretary after this term, but you're now saying that this decision is not up to you. Does this mean that you are willing to continue for 6 or 12 months if you are asked to?
I'm saying exactly the same as I've said all the time. I have no other plans and no other intention, and I don't have any intention of seeking extension.
Very briefly, concerning the counteroffensive, you mentioned several times that the successful counteroffensive will strengthen Ukraine's position at the negotiation table. Do you think that now there is some common ground for the negotiations, or it may appear in case of the counteroffensive?
Well, we don't see any signs from President Putin from Russia that they are actually preparing for peace or any real negotiations. But at the same time, we know that the more ground Ukraine is able to gain through this counteroffensive, the stronger their hand will be at the negotiating table. And we also know that the more successful the Ukrainian counteroffensive is, the more likely it is that President Putin at some stage will realize that he cannot win this war on the battlefield. He has to sit down. Then when that will happen, how it will happen, no one can say that with certainty, but the only thing we know is that if we want a just and enduring peace, then we need to provide the military support to Ukraine, because that's the only way for Ukraine to liberate land and to send a clear message to Moscow that they will know Russia will not win on the battlefield.
Yes, Secretary-General, you've been saying that the member states should agree that the 2% of spending should be the minimum. Are you thinking that at some point the member states will set new targets of spending?
Well, part of our preparations for the Vilnius summit, the NATO summit in next month, and also what will be discussed here at the defense ministerial meeting as a preparation for the summit, is the question of strengthening our commitment to invest more in defense. In 2014, we made what we call the Wales Pledge, where we said that we should move towards spending 2% of GDP on defense within a decade. Now this decade has almost passed, and the world has become much more dangerous with a full-fledged war in Europe, but also other threats and challenges. So I expect that when leaders meet in Vilnius next month, they will agree a stronger pledge, an enduring pledge, and a pledge that has to come into effect immediately, not within a decade. And where 2% of GDP for defense is not some kind of ceiling, but a floor, a minimum that we have to reach. But of course, these are now ongoing consultations among allies, so the exact language in that pledge will be agreed at the summit in Vilnius.
Thank you very much, colleagues. That's all we have time for. We'll see you during the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Я розумію, просто я недавно это так само.
Can we cross this road? Do we want to go to the...
Araba beni ezerse yalnız ben bir şey yapayım sana.
Yes. Good morning. I will just wait for 1 second. There is one more. I can stay as long as I want, but I don't know. Are you ready for that? So we have one more. Are you coming or not? Good. So once again, good morning. We have a very important day today and also tomorrow. I would like to share two topics with you. First, Ukraine, and second, Vilnius summit. First, Ukraine. Definitely at the moment is very, very important to continue the help to Ukraine as the counteroffensive is ongoing. And definitely we all understand what that means. Both sides on the battlefield are having losses, which means that especially our side helping Ukraine is very, very critical, and I'm very happy to see that also we have an agreement with a couple of our allies to announce a new aid package to Ukraine on this meeting today, and I have approved that also in our government. So it's clear that Estonia will continue also the help to Ukraine. Secondly, this also relates to Vilnius, and regarding Vilnius and Ukraine, definitely Estonia sees that the future of Ukraine is in NATO, and we will do everything, of course, to advocate for that, and we would like to see also the next steps made in Vilnius, that we cannot stay only on the messages what were given already in Bucharest. So, but let's see how it goes. Definitely the wording is very important, how that goes. And now coming to Vilnius summit and NATO, for me it's very important that we can approve finally the regional plans. We are on the final stage of that, still some minor details to solve, but definitely we will solve these details among our allies. What is important, that these regional plans have to be implementable or executable by the end of the year, maybe latest by the beginning of the next year, but these plans have to be executable. Also, what is very important is that we hope to achieve the agreement of the air defense rotational model, which helps to strengthen the eastern flank of NATO. And the third topic from our side is that we would like to reach a consensus also on the defense investment pledge. Of course, Estonia will advocate for 2.5% because we understand that last 30 years are for Europe a bit difficult to look back because we have not invested enough to our defense. This has led to big gaps in our defense capabilities, and this is why we believe that 2% actually is not enough. So we have to push for more, we have to push for 2.5, and Estonian government has committed for at least for next 10 years to invest 3% additional to that host nation support for our allies. So we will do more, and we will advocate for 2.5, but of course we have to achieve at first 2% for all the countries, because at the moment approximately 1/3 of the NATO members having 2%. So these are the main goals for Vilnius, these are the main goals for today and for helping Ukraine. And please, the questions.
What do you think Europe needs to do?
Now that the counteroffensive has started, how do you assess the situation on the ground, and what are actually the most urgent needs for Ukraine in this moment?
At this moment, first the message that we will continue helping Ukraine, that Kremlin cannot think that West will go away from Ukraine. No, we will continue helping Ukraine. We will replenish these losses what Ukraine has already. But we also see that the massive counteroffensive is not yet there. So we see a couple of brigades moving in different directions, but definitely we don't see still the big tank battalions moving, and we can believe that in these weeks we will see some more movements. But once again, my message to all of you is very simple: do not put any big pressure or extra pressure to Ukrainians. They know what to do. We are helping them, and let them win this war.
What do you think Europe needs to do to ensure that Ukraine gets all the weapons it needs?
To help Ukraine and to make these decisions what are necessary. So at the moment we know that we have formed these brigades in Europe with equipment, with training of the personnel. We will continue that. So we will continue with the personnel training. We will continue with forming the brigade level equipment. So we will continue, and we will do that everything. And when in one moment we will be there, when we can also send the fighter jets, then this definitely will get or will give to Ukraine some extra moves. But anyway, at the moment I believe Ukraine has what they need. And for us it is important also to guarantee the supplement of the spare parts and maintenance. So this is also very, very important at the moment.
I've got two questions, if I may. If you speak about the counteroffensive, what is, from your perspective, the strategic goal? Is it just more intense battle, or what is the goal? And the other question is concerning the US. Do you think the US is too reluctant to grant a clearer path to Ukraine for NATO membership? Thank you.
First, the goal is very simple: to win this war and to take back all the territories for Ukraine. Of course, it is very, very difficult. We understand that. When we look at the maps, you have seen the maps, how the Russian defense lines are lying in Ukraine. So then definitely it will be very, very difficult for Ukraine to go to the Azov Sea or to go and push through the defense lines of Russia, but definitely they will do that, and then this is the goal, you know, to take back as many territories as they can. Now, regarding Ukraine membership in NATO, well, we all understand that as President Zelensky said that we cannot talk about the NATO membership as far the war is ongoing. So we all understand that. But on the other hand, we also see that you know, any kind of gray zones what Russia wants to build are not something we would like to see in Europe, and then we will not tolerate that. Which means that you know the only security guarantee, actual security guarantee for Ukraine, is NATO membership. When it's going to be, very difficult to say, because we cannot even say when the war will be over. But it's in our hands to help Ukraine to win this war.
But do you think that assessment is shared in Washington, that there cannot be any gray zones anymore?
I believe that also Washington understands perfectly that no country can stop NATO enlargement. If the NATO members collectively decide to accept someone in NATO, then this is the decision of the NATO members, and no country can avoid that.
What's your message to countries that are not meeting the 2% target as it stands?
Sorry, once again.
What's your message to countries that aren't meeting this 2% target as it stands?
Well, my message is very clear. All NATO members made a commitment 2014 in Wales. And this commitment was that in 10 years, all the countries will have 2%. Now we are at war in Europe. And this is the last time and last moment to commit yourself to 2% and even beyond. So, because the gap, as I said, the gap in the last 30 years has been just too big.
Are you disappointed that Germany and the US are not as forward-leaning as they might be on this?
Sorry, once again, because it was...
On membership of
Yes.
Ukraine, are you disappointed that Germany and the US are not as forward-leaning as they could be on this?
Well, once again, on membership, it's a decision of 31 countries, soon 32 countries, and then we all have to be united. One thing what we have to avoid is exactly what Putin wants, that we are separated and we are like not unified. But NATO is united, NATO is unified, and then we will do everything to keep that, and then we will be united also in this decision. Thank you very much. No.
Good morning, everyone. Defense Minister of Latvia, I'd like to start by Ukraine. Ukraine's rightful place is in Euro-Atlantic community. Maidan started as a revolution of dignity, and Ukraine has chosen its way to Euro-Atlantic community, and we must support Ukraine in this road to freedom of its choice. That's why Latvia supports Ukraine's accession to NATO whenever it's possible. Today we see that Russia is waging very brutal and aggressive war against Ukraine, and of course everyone is waiting for very successful Ukraine's counter-offensive. But we must admit it will be long-term process, and we have to support Ukraine not only during this counter-offensive, but as long as it takes. Well, Latvia is a country situated on the eastern flank of NATO, and today we must concentrate on forward defense. For Latvia, it means that we are investing in our defense capabilities. Our defense budget will reach 3% by 2027, but I think that with new defense capability procurements, we will reach 3% sooner than 2027. It's evident for us. Well, I'd like to stress that new NATO defense plans are a big step forward, but it means that they must be we should concentrate on how to fulfill those defense plans, how to execute them. Well, and it means fourth generation, which leads to defense investment pledge. Well, I've told that Latvia will reach 3% sooner than 2027. I hope that it will be NATO, that some other countries will join us in this defense investment pledge steps. But speaking about forward defense concept, we are working together with Canadians on scaling up our NATO battle group till combat capable brigade. It's well on track. Well, thank you.
Minister, is it important to meet with the defense industry later today?
Defense industry is critical. We must produce in numbers, and we concentrate on production in numbers. In Latvia, we can make very good prototypes of something, but today we should concentrate on production in numbers. It is critical. Thank you.
Minister, on membership
Thank you.
for Ukraine, are you disappointed about the U.S. and Germany's stance on this, that they're not as forward-leaning as they could be?
It will be discussed, so discussions will be held, but as I already said, Latvia supports Ukraine's accession to EU and NATO whenever it is possible. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning and greetings from Finland. This is a historic day for us, of course, because this is the first time Finland participates the defense ministers meeting as an ally. So looking forward for important and good discussions how to strengthen the alliance here. Today, of course, we are discussing how to assist and keep helping Ukraine when it's fighting for its freedom. Finland will have a new government pretty soon. We are under the talks of the new government. Probably next week we'll have already a new government. But I can assure you that Finland keeps on supporting Ukraine also in the future. Thank you.
Now that the counteroffensive has started, how do you assess the situation on the ground and what, in your opinion, are the most urgent needs for Ukraine?
Well, we are going to hear the latest from the ground. I'm sure that our colleague Oleksiy Reznikov will tell us more. But sure, it's not a piece of cake. It certainly is difficult and very challenging. But of course, we hope that Ukraine succeeds there very well. But I'm sure that we'll get more information about this all today, and we are listening carefully what kind of needs Ukraine has at the moment, and Finland and I'm sure the other countries also try to react for that. Thank you.
What is in a way only a single chance opportunity for Ukraine now that they have the tanks and maybe airplanes? If it fails,
I'm afraid that this war will take a long time. Hopefully not, but I'm afraid that it will take a long time. So of course we are living in crucial times here, and certainly very important days and weeks here. But I'm afraid this won't be over soon.
do you have any indications that the US could be more forthcoming when it comes to giving a clearer path to NATO for Ukraine?
Well, that's the path to NATO is something which will be debated in the coming weeks, and especially in the Vilnius summit. So I leave those talks later. Thank you.
Post like Secretary-General so important even for Finland as for NATO?
The post for Secretary-General. Of course, it's very important. It's a very key role in the alliance, and I think from the Finnish point of view, Mr. Stoltenberg has done very good work. But of course, I'm sure that he's interested of retiring someday, and we'll see what kind of solution we'll have. But I don't want to speculate with that question more.
You want him for continuing? That's a serious question. You want him to continue?
I just say that he's done very good work. I'd say that that option doesn't sound bad for my ears, but I have to also say at the same time that I'm representing the caretaking government in Finland at the moment, so I don't want to take strong political positions or strong give political opinions here.
Do you think Europe has strength for a long war?
Sorry?
Do you think Europe has enough strength for a long war?
For the long run? That's a good question. Good question. It's important that we keep on supporting Ukraine. We cannot get tired with this all. I think there's a strong will in European countries and in NATO also. So I believe so. But anyway, this question is good.
Thank you.
I have to leave now. Sorry.
Thank you.
Good morning. We are at a crucial moment of this Ukraine war. The offensive has started of the Ukrainian armies now do everything to support Ukraine as long as it takes. So really, I hope that we will take another important decisions today to support Ukraine, especially also the political support that they need, because it's not only the military but also the political and the moral support. Thank you.
Minister, on
Yes.
defense spending, what would Luxembourg's position be on 2% of spending of GDP as a floor, not a ceiling?
Luxembourg has the position that it is important that every country does more efforts to really spend more money for defense. But we must also look at the specificity of the different countries like Luxembourg. We have a special situation because we have a GDP that is calculated in a situation where we have, for example, 230,000 commuters working in Luxembourg, so not Luxembourg citizens, and that must be taken in account also when we make the calculation what the 2% means. We are ready to agree, but the question is how you calculated the 2%. For example, I think that we should take into account the R&B, so that our specific situation with a country with 630,000 inhabitants, but also 230,000 commuters being not from my country, really must be taken into account when we calculate your 2%. Ja?
sollen die Europäer tun, damit die Ukraine die Waffen bekommt, was sie braucht?
Also das Wichtigste ist, dass wir ja heute auch entscheiden werden und auch ein Treffen haben mit der Rüstungsindustrie, damit im Grunde die hauptsächliche Munition schneller geliefert werden kann. Es gibt ja auch die europäische Initiative, die sehr wichtig ist, aber vor allem die Produktion muss gesteigert werden, weil es kommt jetzt darauf an, dass in den nächsten Monaten die Ukraine das bekommt, was sie benötigt.
Både fra dansk side, men også fra andre landes side.
Der er vi jo stadigvæk et godt stykke fra, at de fly kan potentielt blive operative i det ukrainske luftrum. Jeg vurderer, at den her træningsindsats kommer til at tage som minimum et halvt år. Og noget af det, der jo også er udstående, det er jo, at de piloter, der skal gennemgå træningsindsatsen, skal have nogle meget, meget dygtige engelskkundskaber for at være i stand til at både forstå, men ikke mindst også navigere i det her koncept for træning. De skal være meget, meget dygtige til engelsk, fordi at det engelsk, man skal besidde for at kan læse de manualer, kan få den træning. Der er det altså ikke nok, at man kan et minimalt engelsk. Der skal man have nogle meget, meget gode engelskkompetencer. Og derfor kan det også godt være, at en del af den her omskolingsindsats kommer til at handle om noget sprogundervisning i starten.
Det betyder jo så, på det du siger, at man reelt faktisk har taget beslutningen om, at F-16 skal til Ukraine.
Det har vi ikke gjort fra den side. Vi har hele tiden sagt, at den her beslutning må man dele op i to bidder. Den første bid handler om, at man skal gøre det muligt for de ukrainske piloter at gå fra at flyve MiG-kampfly til at kan flyve F-16. Og der så kan man så diskutere, om man så fra den side også skal lave en donation. Det er jo ikke sådan, at de to ting hænger sammen. Men omvendt kan man sige, det nytter jo heller ikke noget at lave en donation af kampfly, som nogen har været ude at foreslå her i løbet af foråret. Fordi de vil jo så ikke være i stand til at flyve dem, hvis man bare donerer kampflyene. Og for så også at gøre det her yderligere kompliceret, så handler det jo også om, at i det tilfælde, at man kommer til at donere F-16 kampfly, så skal man jo også sørge for at have en struktur i Ukraine, hvor man så kan både beskytte dem, men også have mulighed for at servicere dem, og kan have nogle faciliteter, hangarer og landingsbaner, hvorfra de kan operere.
Der var en anden ting, som Stoltenberg blev spurgt om, også fra vores side i dag, det er, om han er mulig at overtale til en forlængelse af NATO-generalen.
First and foremost, our focus will be on air defense. There will be an announcement by 4 countries that we will send as soon as possible missiles for air defense. The Netherlands has announced, I reported to Parliament yesterday, that we have a new package of 150 million euros for radars, for detection, also needed for the integrated air defense. And of course we will be discussing the training of Ukrainian pilots on F-16s. Denmark and the Netherlands will provide our partners with further information on this project.
Wat voor perspectief wilt u Oekraïne bieden op de NAVO-top in Vilnius?
Ja, we gaan natuurlijk hebben we ook een bijeenkomst van de NAVO-ministers van Defensie. NAVO heeft al eerder perspectief geboden voor Oekraïne. Hè? Dus dat is in 2008 in Boekarest gebeurd. Nou, daar gaan we natuurlijk geen letter van terugnemen. Dus ik denk dat het heel belangrijk is dat dat op de agenda staat. Dat Oekraïne een volwaardig partnerschap heeft met NAVO. Dat we vooral doorgaan met de transitie van de Oekraïnse krijgsmacht naar NATO-standaarden. Dat is natuurlijk heel erg belangrijk voor de afschrikking die in de toekomst nodig zal zijn om te voorkomen dat Rusland opnieuw probeert Oekraïne binnen te vallen.
Een vraag over het geld, want ik kan natuurlijk niet anders als Hollander. Er is nog steeds discussie over wat nu de nieuwe NAVO-norm moet worden. De Amerikanen, sommige Oost-Europese landen, die zeggen nou, er mag ook wel weer een nieuw percentage op, uiteraard hoger. U heeft ook de ruimte van de Tweede Kamer om het verder te gaan dan 2%. Wat wilt u nu precies?
Nou, wat voor mij ontzettend belangrijk is, Nederland heeft gezegd, wij waren op weg naar 2% en we gaan naar de 2%. 2024, 2025 zit Nederland op 2%. Voor iedere minister van Defensie is het belangrijk om lange termijn zekerheid te hebben. En dat je op lange termijn weet dat je kunt investeren in mensen, in capaciteiten. En zorgen dat de fundamenten op orde zijn. Want dat is toch ook de les ook van het verleden. De basis was niet meer op orde. Dan heb je geen sterke defensie. We zullen een sterke krijgsmacht nodig hebben voor onze NAVO-verplichtingen, voor onze Europese verplichtingen en voor de verdediging van ons land over de hele linie. Dus die lange termijn doelstelling, die onderschrijf ik volledig. En dat zal ik ook zeggen in de NAVO.
Eerst moet er niet een duidelijke boodschap komen aan landen die ver achterblijven en denken, er is een oorlog in Europa, maar we kunnen nog wel tot 2030 wachten tot we de NAVO-norm halen?
Ieder land heeft daar een eigen verantwoordelijkheid in. Op dit moment was al de afspraak, we streven naar 2%. Ik denk dat we allemaal zien dat de veiligheidsomstandigheden aanzienlijk zijn verslechterd. In Europa, maar ook in de rest van de wereld. Dus dat die defensiebudgetten omhoog moeten en hoog zullen blijven, staat voor mij vast. En ik ben ervan overtuigd dat andere landen dat ook zo zien.
Minister, now the counteroffensive has started. How do you assess the situation on the ground and what in your opinion, are the most urgent needs for Ukraine?
Yes, the counteroffensive has started. I'm confident because we have seen the training of the Ukrainian military. We know the capabilities that they have. I think that still the most urgent need is to focus on air defense. That is extremely important. That is on the short term, on the middle term and also on the long term, which is why we have now started the program for training Ukrainian pilots on the F-16 platform.
Minister Stoltenberg, the member states are discussing security assurances in the form of bilateral arrangements. Could you imagine the Netherlands is doing the same with Ukraine, and could it already happen in Vilnius?
Well, I don't want to go ahead of the discussion. Of course, there have to be security arrangements for after the war. But at this moment, unfortunately, the war is still ongoing. As a matter of fact, the fighting is increasing because of the counteroffensive. And what we will discuss in Vilnius and preparing, of course, today are different types of arrangement. And I think the partnership with Nato is very important. But we will discuss that behind closed doors and see where we can get to Vilnius.
Ja. Over de tanks die hier in Nederland over heeft in Zwitserland zouden kunnen komen. Zit daar inmiddels schot in en komen die bovenop die 100 die wij Nederland eerder van gewacht maken?
Ja, wij op verschillende sporen doen wij mee met de tankcoalitie. Dit is één spoor, dit gaat over de Leopard 1 tank. Daar worden er sowieso in die coalitie 100 of meer dan 100 geleverd. Er is inderdaad ook een onderdeel wat Zwitserse goedkeuring behoeft. Dat komt dus bovenop die 100. En ja, ik ben steeds, ik heb wel vertrouwen in gehad dat dat uiteindelijk gaat lukken. Maar de beslissing moet daar nog over genomen worden in Zwitserland.
Dan heeft één kamer van het Zwitserse parlement daar toch weer ingestemd. Een bijzondere wending. Biedt dat, maakt dat optimistisch?
Ja, ik heb er vertrouwen in. Ik neig naar optimistisch zijn op de goede afloop.
Would the Netherlands consider sending the jets to Ukraine before the war ends?
We have decided now on starting the training for Ukrainian pilots on the F-16 platform. That is a very important step, and we were very happy that we got the green light from Washington, and Denmark and the Netherlands are now working out the training on the platform. Of course, it's about pilots, but it's also training about technical personnel, maintenance, etc. A next step, but that would need a new decision also by the Americans, would be provide them with the actual platform, but that is not on the table right now. Well, we have to ramp up. That is also why I'm happy that we're having a meeting with the European, or with the defense industry behind NATO today. And we're doing that also in the European context. Well, I wouldn't want to comment on Russia, besides saying that, of course, all the sanctions that we've put in is hitting Russian industry, and it makes it much more difficult for them, and that is exactly the purpose of the sanctions.
And do you have a clear idea of what the objective of the Ukrainian counteroffensive is or should be?
Well, the objective of the self-defense of Ukraine is, of course, regaining territory and assuring sovereignty and territorial integrity. And that has our full support. And, of course, Ukraine does not disclose its strategy in the counteroffensive. And I think that is very wise of them.
Do you think Ukraine has enough to win this war?
I think that we all feel that this is an illegal war, that this type of aggression can never be rewarded, and that is why we support Ukraine. And we've done so massively with weapons, with ammunition and with training, and many countries, including the Netherlands, has assured Ukraine that we will continue to support them for as long as necessary. The counteroffensive is on its way, and I think we have shown massive support, and we will see. Thank you.
Bonjour tout le monde. Nous sommes ici encore une fois pour une autre rencontre avec nos homologues pour discuter l'aide militaire pour l'Ukraine. Fin de semaine passée, le Premier ministre Trudeau était en Ukraine avec le président Zelensky pour discuter une augmentation d'aide militaire pour l'Ukraine. Et il a annoncé une autre 500 millions de dollars en aide militaire pour l'Ukraine du Canada. In particular, Prime Minister Trudeau announced another $500 million in military aid for Ukraine. That's on top of the already $1 billion of military aid that Canada has put on the table for Ukraine. Canada will be extending Operation Unifier, which is the training mission under which over 36,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been trained. In addition, Canada will be donating 10,000 rounds of 105 millimeter ammunition, almost 300 air defense missiles to keep Ukrainian skies safe. Canada will also be contributing to the multinational coalition on the F-16s, as well as contributing to the tank maintenance center in Poland. Canada has donated already 8 Leopard 2A4 battle tanks. I hope you can see that Canada will stand with Ukraine in the short and the long term in respect of its territorial integrity, its sovereignty, its security, and of course, the rules-based international order that has kept us all safe since the end of the Second World War. We stand with our allies and we stand with Ukraine. Merci beaucoup.
On defense spending, would Canada support 2% of GDP as a floor?
Canada is continuing to increase its defense spending. It's increased by 70% in the 9-year period beginning in 2017. In addition to that, we put on the table $8 billion in military spending in our 2022 budget and $40 billion over 20 years for NORAD modernization and continental defense. Canada is the 6th largest defense budget in NATO overall. And we have tangible commitments, boots on the ground, in particular on NATO's eastern flank in Latvia as a leader of the Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group in Latvia. So we believe that it is important to continue to increase defense spending, and that is exactly what we're here to discuss with our NATO colleagues in addition to the question that you posed.
But will you
commit to actually reaching 2% in the near future?
We're continuing to have that conversation right here in Brussels, and it is going to be incredibly important not only to discuss aid to Ukraine, but the coalition going forward. And there are a number of important items on the table, including defense spending, which I look forward to having that conversation with my colleagues.
Some Western weapons have been found in Russia. Do you see a risk of escalation?
The story of the last 16 months has been one of escalation, and it is a result of Vladimir Putin's illegal and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine. In order for this war to come to a conclusion, Vladimir Putin needs to do what's right and leave Ukraine. The destruction and the devastation and the loss of human life is absolutely horrendous and unacceptable, and it needs to stop by Vladimir Putin exiting Ukraine.
Minister, question about Latvia. What about inclusion of NATO, of Canadian troops as a frame state in battlefield in Latvia? How it looks like?
Well, thank you for that question, because it highlights Canada's important work in Latvia as a framework nation since 2017. In fact, the Latvia operation, which we call Operation Reassurance, is Canada's largest international operation where we've deployed approximately 1,000 soldiers in the air, on land, and at sea. And so, as you're aware, last year we committed to move that commitment to brigade level together with our allies and other partners in the framework nation. And that is exactly what we're working on. I met with Minister Mournice in Canada to discuss our plan going forward to move to brigade level. The Chief of Defence Staff, Wayne Eyre, has been meeting with his counterparts across the multinational effort in Latvia that we are leading to discuss what items they are going to put on the table in terms of capabilities and in terms of human resources. But make no mistake, we are very much committed to Operation Reassurance and to Latvia because of the importance of our NATO contribution as well as maintaining a strong eastern flank for NATO.
Minister, on the
good meeting this morning.
We have to wait for Secretary-General his round.
I think you know this guy, right?
Yeah, good to see you.
Hey, how are you? Okay, we'll try it again. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for the 13th meeting of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Before we begin, let me say a few words about the Russian missile attack in the city of Kryvyi on Tuesday. The Russian barrage struck an apartment building and, according to reports, killed nearly a dozen people and injured many more. And recently, residents of this city have been forced to ration water after the destruction of the dam in Kherson last week. And this is one more reminder of the war's devastating consequences to innocent Ukraine civilians. But the people of Ukraine continue to inspire us with their courage and their resilience. And Ukraine continues to fight to liberate its sovereign territory from Russian occupation. So we're meeting at a critical and historic moment. As President Biden has said, this war is about extinguishing Ukraine's right to exist as a state, plain and simple. So this contact group has come together once again to stand up for the values of sovereignty and freedom. I'd like to thank Ukrainian Minister of Defense Oleksiy Reznikov for joining us again. Oleksiy, your leadership reflects the determination of the Ukrainian people. When Russia launched its unprovoked invasion of Ukraine more than a year ago, Putin thought that he could easily prevail. But he was wrong. The Ukrainians won the Battle of Kyiv. They liberated Kharkiv and Kherson. And today, Ukraine stands well positioned for the challenges ahead. The United States is proud to stand alongside some 50 nations of goodwill to provide Ukraine with the training and the equipment to help it succeed on the battlefield. Throughout the Kremlin's vicious war of choice, the Ukrainian forces have shown outstanding bravery and skill. And Ukraine's fight is a marathon and not a sprint. So we will continue to provide Ukraine with the urgent capabilities that it needs to meet this moment, as well as what it needs to keep itself secure for the long term from Russian aggression. And make no mistake, we will stand with Ukraine for the long haul. You can see that commitment in our ongoing security assistance to Ukraine. Last week, the United States announced a new package of more than $2 billion under the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. This package includes additional munitions for Patriot air defense systems, Hawk air defense systems and missiles, additional 105 millimeter and 203 millimeter artillery rounds, and more. And on Tuesday, President Biden authorized the 40th drawdown of equipment from U.S. stocks. This $325 million package includes munitions for Ukraine's NASAMS and HIMARS, additional Bradley fighting vehicles and Stryker armored personnel carriers, and anti-tank weapons, and other critical capabilities. As I say, our commitment to Ukraine is enduring, and this contact group remains united and determined. Our efforts are grounded in a broader strategic approach. We seek to ensure that Ukraine has the capabilities that it needs to protect its citizens and its territory, and to deter further aggression from the Russians, and ultimately to prevail over Putin's campaign of cruelty and conquest. And our agenda today reflects those goals. This contact group has been intensely focused on enabling Ukraine to protect its citizens and critical infrastructure with air defense assets. These contributions are shielding Ukrainian civilians from Russia's merciless missile and drone attacks. This group's donation of Patriot, RST, and NASAM systems are saving Ukrainian lives. And I ask that the members of this contact group continue to dig deep to provide Ukraine with the air defense assets and munitions so that it so urgently needs to protect its citizens. We'll also continue to adapt our assistance to meet the changing circumstances on the ground and the changing needs of Ukraine's forces. At our last meeting, we announced a new initiative led by the Netherlands and Denmark to train Ukrainian pilots on fourth-generation aircraft, including the F-16. And I want to thank the Netherlands and Denmark for spearheading that important effort. And we look forward to hearing more about your progress today. And later, Germany and Poland will brief us on the next steps in the vital task of sustaining Ukraine's Leopard tanks. We applaud the leadership that has gone into forging two coalitions, one dedicated to fighter aircraft training and another to provide and sustain Leopard tanks. And I want to commend the many members of this contact group who have already started to address the longer-term needs of Ukraine's armed forces. That will help ensure that Ukraine's forces have the capabilities that they need to defend their country against Russian aggression in the future. And it's become increasingly clear that Ukraine needs a force that is interoperable with our militaries. So today we'll hear from the U.S. EUCOM Commander, General Cavoli, and several of our colleagues on future training plans and our work on in-theater sustainment. All these efforts will help sustain Ukraine's military for the current fight, yet they will also lay the foundation for Ukraine's future force. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kremlin's imperial ambitions have inflicted unimaginable suffering on the Ukrainian people. Yet the Ukrainians continue to inspire us with their resilience, their bravery, and their unwavering commitment to keep their country free and secure. So together, we will stay united, and together we will rise to meet the challenges of changing circumstances, and together we will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. So with that, I'll pause and allow our friends in the media to depart.